frantic. Over the intercom he heard Donna exclaim in dismay. He caught a fleeting sight of her face and realized that the situation must be torture for the girl, as for himself or any normal person of their civilization. Cursing himself for an optimist, he raised 2 more of the missiles from the magazine. Hopping about like a jet checker 5 minutes before takeoff time, he made them ready. It seemed like hours before he got them into the launching tubes and blew them out into the void. Again he watched the other vessel appear ahead of his torpedoes, this time on both screens. Before the gap narrowed, he had a better opportunity to see the defences of the cruiser in action. A whitish cloud of gas was expelled from his target's hull, bearing a myriad of small objects, which promptly acquired a life of their own. Both screens were filled with flashing, diverging trails of flame. Then, nothing. "They're heading at us," called Donna. "Hang on." Phillips had already pulled the switches to bring up a new pair of torpedoes. Hearing the urgency in Donna's tone, he leapt towards a rack of spacesuits and grabbed. The next instant he was pinned forcibly against the rack by acceleration as Donna made the ship dodge aside. From one side he heard a screech of grating metal. The fresh missiles must have jammed halfway out of the storage compartment. It gave him a weird feeling of unreality as he hung there helplessly to see one of the screens on the bulkhead pick up something moving, gleaming, metallic. "Donna!" he shouted hoarsely. "Let up!" "I don't dare!" she gasped over the intercom. "I lost them, but they were starting after us." "Let up!" repeated Phillips. "They're dead ahead of that wild shot of ours. Let me get to the controls." He dropped abruptly to the deck as the acceleration vanished. One leap carried him to the radio controls. The metallic gleam had swelled into a huge spaceship. The cruiser was angling slightly away from the point from which he had seemed to be viewing it. How soon, he wondered, would they detect the presence of his torpedo? Or would they neglect this direction, being intent upon the destruction of those who were attempting to frustrate their mad dash for Mars? Philip stood before the screen, clenching his fists. There was, after all, nothing for him to do but watch. The gleaming hull expanded with a swelling rush. Details of construction hitherto invisible leaped out at him. A crack finally appeared as the section began to slide back. This time, however, there was no blinding flare of small rockets. The blacking out of the screen coincided with Donna's scream. "It hit!" In the silence that followed, he thought he heard a sob. "Oh, Phillips," she said, recovering. "We did it. They're—" "Hang on," said Phillips. "I'll climb into a spacesuit and come forward." He switched off the intercom and dragged his suit from the rack. It took him a good 15 minutes to get the helmet screwed on properly and to check everything else. He realized that he was very tired. He opened the exit hatch, seized the top of the ladder in his gauntlets as the air exploded out of the turret, and climbed back to the main deck. Clumping through the airless corridor, he stopped to look into the compartment where he had left Brecken. He quickly slid the door shut again. He found that Donna had sealed off the corridor just short of the control room by closing a double emergency door that must have been designed to form an airlock in just such a situation. He hammered upon it, and she slid it open from the control desk. It closed again behind him, and he entered the control room through the usual door. The girl helped him to remove the suit and motioned him toward the screen. Phillips regarded the scene without enthusiasm. The sight of the dead man had reminded him of what the compartments of that other vessel must look like by now. Its parts were beginning to scatter slowly. He looked at Donna and found her regarding him soberly. "What will they do with us now?" she asked. She looked exhausted. He extended an arm and she leaned against him. "You heard what Varrett said," he told her. "Yes, but will he keep his word? They might be ashamed of us now that it's done. Even if they're not, I can't bear the thought of going back to Earth and having them stare at me." Phillips nodded. He remembered the morbid curiosity during his own trial, the crowds who had watched him with a kind of shrinking horror. He had actually been responsible for saving a spaceship and its crew, had they cared to look on that side of the affair. But he had killed. That was no longer the action of a human being, according to popular thinking. "I guess you and I are the only ones who will understand one another from now on," he shrugged. Donna smiled faintly. just as the signal sounded on the communication screen. It was Varric, looking pale and strange. He listened to Philip's account, including the deaths of Truesdale and Brecon, and apologized for his appearance. He had, he informed them, been unpleasantly ill when he had seen the explosion.
"It was a terrible thing,"
Varric continued sadly,
"but necessary. They were beyond reasoning with a deadly menace."
He pulled himself together and tried to hide his agitation by reminding them of his promise. He suggested that they consider their requests while his ship attempted to tow them into Deimos. Phillips glanced speculatively at Donna. They would be two outcasts. However much their deed might be respected abstractly, however much official expressions of gratitude were employed to gloss over the fact, he might as well take one chance more. "We have already decided," he said boldly. "I hear you're building a new space station on Deimos." The old man nodded, surprised. "We will ask for a deed to that moon, and a contract to operate the beacon and radio relay station," Philip stated flatly. Varric blinked, then smiled slightly in a sort of understanding admiration.
"Reasonable and astute,"
he murmured after a moment's hesitation.
"I think I appreciate the motive. Perhaps if that ship can be repaired and remodeled, we can make it so that you may make short visits to Mars."
He warned them to watch for the emergency crew that he would send to their aid, and switched off. Phillips then dared, finally, to turn and look inquiringly at Donna. Her smile was relaxed for the first time since they had met. "Nice bargaining," she said. And Phillips felt like the king of something larger than a tiny Martian satellite. That is the end of This World Must Die by H.B. Fife. It was read for LibriVox.org by Sean Randall from the United Kingdom on the 9th of August, 2010.